Sacktown, along with the other clones. You in?
Thanks for the vine, Tone. We're talking to Dave Briggs of the Toledo Blade over something I'm very passionate about. Stupid teams making stupid decisions to jump up to stupid places they shouldn't be in. It's the emerging podcast scene, presented by Extend Technologies on 92.3 The Fan Extra on the free Odyssey app.
I'm out.
Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Fan Offseason Special, another Tuesday, and it means another 2 hours of Browns talk. Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder, all with you guys here, bringing you another edition. And, of course, Darryl, brought to you by our good friends over there at Scheiben Jewelers, Cleveland's premier jewelry store. A lot still happening as it feels like we're in the complete dead spot of basically sports in general outside of the Olympics and college basketball. It's a NBA All-Star weekend this week. We have a severe dead period in football just in general, but somehow, some way, the Browns still find a way to make it interesting. They still find a way to give us something to talk about. You can always count on them. It might not always be good, but you can count on them for something. And I would say this week, mostly good things. So that's a positive to go around. But guys, how are we doing today?
Very well. How are you today? Doing well?
I think we're
weather
doing
was
all
nice.
right.
It's nice walking in without freezing. It's
beautiful.
That was the nice part. I had a nice little walk today. It felt great.
I had the downside, went to go get my hair cut. My barber was not there. I had to turn around, and I have to get it like 2 days later. But other than that, it's been a tremendous day. I mean, I've been having fun.
I got a good hairstyle for you if you want it. I got one for you.
Am I taking yours?
Yeah.
Wear a hat?
Soon. Maybe someday.
Listen, I was talking about it with Nick, and Nick gave me the very nice comment last week on Friday that he goes, I mean this in the nicest way possible, but you look like you're going to go bald soon. I go, one, there's no nice way. There's no nice way to tell somebody that. And
No,
two,
it's not. That's a harsh reality. I got you. No, I got that conversation.
But yeah, this
Many
is
years
very
ago.
easy. Very easy. I said, as soon as I start to go bald, all the hair comes off. It's done. I just accept it as soon as it starts, and I go bald immediately, and everybody accepts it.
Well, I would say this. When I look back, you don't realize how bald you are when you look back at the pictures. Because when I look back, I didn't think I was that bald. And then finally I made the move. I was like, yeah, it's time to go.
Okay, Coach, I'm counting on you then. You tell me when I start to
I
go
will.
bald.
I know you well enough now. I'll make the move for you.
Make the call. Listen, all I want is honesty. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If you go, hey, hair's starting to fall a little bit, you should probably get rid of it. I'll go, okay, you know what? Coach told me we're good.
All right, good.
That's the call to make. But a lot of things to jump into for today. We should start where Todd Monkin is now officially starting to close up a lot of the staffing positions, starting to fill a lot of those. And obviously the big one on the opposite side of the ball that Todd's going to be more in charge of is going to be that defensive side. And we do have a defensive coordinator, Rutenberg, which I would imagine just about everybody in this city probably turned around and went, who?
Yes. Okay, can confirm.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody, like, radar-wise, I mean, we talk so much about, like, Undlin was there, basically anybody on the Texan staff, internal hires. I don't think Rutenberg was a name that a lot of people were just floating around and going, you got to watch out, this can be the guy. Even when, when you backtrack it and you go back and look, I think a lot of these things do make a lot of sense. Like, well, I think he was a quality control coach alongside Jim Schwartz, basically when the wide nine was, I don't know if invented was the right way to put that, but when it was popularized and it was with that Tennessee defense, they were both in the same spots coming from that same tree.
Yeah, and I guess that's the link here, right? Mm-hmm. That fits into what Todd Monkin had said about not changing the system. The new defensive coordinator was going to come off of that tree. However, and I think Lance can touch on this a little more than me, but in the secondary does some different things than what Jim Schwartz does, which does concern me because the personnel that they have right now are man-to-man. They don't have zone personnel. That concerns me a little bit. That's not to say that they can't adapt, but like right now, I kind of just wanted everything to stay the same. If you wanted to change the verbiage and the language and fine, but like just leave the scheme completely alone because you have built your personnel the last couple of years for that. But all that being said, right, you look at the coordinators that he has brought in, Travis Switzer for, offensive coordinator, Byron Storer replacing Bubba Ventrone as the special teams coordinator, and now Mike Rutenberg, who, by the way, I made this joke filling in, Nick Padone and I were filling in for Ken and Anthony on the morning show, and I I just, was making a joke, callback to the head coaching search, right? We all thought it was between Shieldhouse and Schwartz, and then they completely turned a left turn on all of us, and they hired Todd Monkin, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. They're going to, this is definitely going to be coming down between Tarver and Unlin. But you know what? Because the Browns are the Browns, they're totally going to hire Mike Rutenberg. And it turns out that's exactly what they did a few hours later. So here we are. All 3 coordinator spots are picked. So now you have the law firm of Monkin, Switzer, Rutenberg, and Storer in charge of your Cleveland Browns here in 2026.
Well, I'll say this about Rutenberg. Daryl, going back to what you said about schematically, I think you're going to be, everybody will be pleasantly surprised. So the scheme is always going to be different. So all of us, if we ran the same scheme, we're all going to call it differently, even if we have the same scheme. The philosophy stays the same. The front 7 are going to be aggressive. The linebackers are going to play downhill. They're going to be in wide. They're going to be one-gap penetrators. Secondary-wise, it's not zone, but it's the pre to post snap. If you look at Robert Saleh from when he played the Browns and kind of breaking them down, you're going to get a lot of pre-snap to post-snap differences. However, most of the time, it's the foundation is man coverage with one hi-hat. So even though, and the Browns did that a little bit this year, where they went to some 2 hi-hats, especially on 3rd and long, he kind of went a little bit farther than he ever has. But the idea of the scheme's always going to be different when you go to a different coach, but the philosophy stays the same. And even though they're going to give you some different kind of pre-snap looks, most of the time it's going to end up in a one hi-hat. You're going to be in man coverage. So a guy like Tyson, Campbell, who's really good man, he'll be in man most of the time. These are guys that are going to kind of play to their strengths. So again, he wasn't on my radar. I did some work when he was in the mix. And Robert Saleh is really aggressive. So the philosophy is the same. Scheme will be a little different. Secondary will be a little different. But in the end, there'll be a lot of man coverage, one hi-hat, the things the Browns have been good at.
Yeah, I think you look around and I feel like a lot of the way we feel about a lot of coaches, it's a lot of nice things to say about them when you go to their superiors within coaching. Like Jeff Ulbrich had a really nice quote detailing that it was just a matter of time basically before he became a coordinator and he was that good. I also turn around, obviously the guy has not been a defensive coordinator yet in his career in the NFL. I think it started in like 2003 is when he was taking legitimate roles that weren't like quality control, but in charge of like a unit or something. Has not yet been a defensive coordinator, and you don't know the name. It's not one of the names that pop up. I always question these, right? Because it's not something that innately scares me off because I'm not opposed to, hey, you've never heard of that guy, doesn't mean he's a bad football coach. But I think for a lot of people, I've never heard of that guy is one of the scarier moments, especially when it's not, hey, it doesn't have to be, Wing Martindale, who everybody basically knows, but it's not even a guy whose name has really been floated around all that much.
Yeah, and, the fact that, it was interesting seeing the reaction from Atlanta to the hire. Mm-hmm. I guess that people can feel pretty good. The Falcons feel that that's a pretty big loss for them. So you can, I guess, take solace in that. Just because maybe he's not a household name doesn't mean he's not a good coach and not going to be a good coordinator. Same thing with these other guys that Monkin has brought in. Hugh Jackson was supposed to be the hire of hires, right? The Browns hit the lottery by convincing Hugh Jackson to take their job. Bubba Ventrone, right? When they replaced Mike Prefer with him, everyone's like, oh, man, just jackpot. Kevin Stefanski doing work. The Browns doing work. Bringing him in, even though it wasn't Kevin Stefanski, I think that brought him in. It was those above him that brought him in, but that's neither here nor there. So, let's not get caught up in the whole it's fun to make, we can make jokes or whatever, and people do, but, let's not get caught up in the household name thing. Because the household names, a lot of times, don't work out.
This is very true. I feel like we've gotten this multiple times this year. Dan Pitcher was talked about. He came up in the Brown search, and Bengals fans are like, God, not Dan Pitcher, right? Don't go after Dan Pitcher. That's our secret weapon. I feel like we've gotten 3 or 4 of those guys in this search. I think in a lot of ways, Udinski and Shieldhouse kind of fit into that category. We're like, oh, these are important guys on our offense. Maybe we don't take those guys.
And you're going to hear those names in the future, too. Yeah. Pitcher, Shieldhouse, Udinski. You're going to hear those names as early as 2027's coaching cycle. They're not going away. I do think all 3 of those gentlemen will ultimately be head coaches. Remains to be seen if they'll be successful. But yeah, that's kind of how this goes in the NFL. we went into the offseason thinking that it was going to be 3, 4, maybe 5, including the Browns making coaching changes, and it ended up being nearly a third of the league blowing their staffs out. So I think that just speaks to the volatility around the National Football League, not just here in Cleveland. And I don't know that it's fair to say that there's volatility here in Cleveland because, Stefanski was here for 6 years. So, it's not like he was here for 1 or 2 years and they made a change out. He was here for 6. In pro sports, 6 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long tenure. You're absolutely right.
Would have had him in the top, I think, 7 tenured coaches at this point for how long they've been in their jobs in the NFL. I do turn around and look at the defense now, though. And I've bounced back and forth this because I felt like the defensive coordinator hire was going to be really important for this defense. And the more and more time we've gotten removed from Jim Schwartz not being named the head coach, likely walking out, to now this hire, I feel like there's been a feeling more and more that, like, yeah, the hire is important, but after the scheme staying the same, after all this stuff isn't changing, well, the defense is probably going to be fine. Like, I question how much changing, because I know, Lance, you were high on Jim Schwartz and how he ran the defense, the mentality that he brought to the team every day was really impactful. It wasn't just the scheme and all the things that people can see. I now question how concerned we should be, not just off of Rutenberg, just off of, hey, it's not Jim Schwartz, it's not somebody internally in that building, to how that translates to what the defense is now.
Well, the good thing about Rutenberg, when people ask me, what does a pass game coordinator do? Where obviously, he's in charge of what the teams are trying to do formation-wise, what they're trying to do in and out, up and down. There's only so many things you can do. But what you like, sometimes for me, I like guys that work from the back to the front in terms of defensive coordinators, because whatever coverage you run has to tie in with what you're running in the front seven.
Yep.
Sometimes when you go the opposite way, it's, sometimes those front seven guys don't really know the coverage as well. Some do, of course, not everybody. But those guys who are secondary guys, they are tied into what that front seven is doing. And for me, I think it's really kind of nice if he's going to stay with man, and if you go back and kind of read and go and kind of dive deep, he wants to kind of play to the strengths of what was there when he gets there. And that's what good coaches do. So even if he is going to do a little bit more of pre-snap to post-snap changing, he's a high-energy guy. He's a guy that's detailed. He's a guy that's going to, once again, for everybody, I would say, what is Devin Bush, Tyson Campbell, Malik Collins, Alex Wright, what are they going to do? How are they? They had great years this year. Miles, Schlesinger, Denzel, they're going to be good regardless who the coordinator was. It's those secondary guys. That's where I want to see his input. That's what I think Schwartz did very good. Once again, I'm not losing a game, and I'm not judging him before we see what happens. Obviously, a lot of people have said good things. Schematically, philosophy-wise, it works, and we'll see how it translates to when now you're the guy, though. And that's a big difference between this is what I would do to now this is what you have to do. That's a big difference.
Well, that goes back to Todd Monkin talking about in his introductory press conference of how, first of all, he didn't take the job because of Jim Schwartz. He took it because of Myles Garrett, Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward, Carson Schlesinger, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he took it for Shedeur Sanders, or I don't think he took it for Jerry Jeudy, or whether or not Joel Bitonio comes back, and we'll get into that later in the show. But it's a players' league, and the coaches are as good as the players execute. And I think that has to be remembered. Now, to Jim Schwartz's credit, he was able to get those players to execute at a high level for the most part. They did get let's not forget, they got Dahl walked down the field against the Minnesota Vikings in London and lost that game, right? They were not able to beat a hapless Jets team. They were not able to beat a hapless Titans team. So when we sit here and talk about how many more games were the Browns supposed to win, well, I guess they would have been the ugliest 8-win team in NFL history had they, closed those games out. But then I flip and say, well, they shouldn't have beat the Packers. Okay?
Right.
So maybe they're the ugliest 7-win team.
Well, that usually always evens out, right? You're right about that.
Yeah, it does. But, it'll be up to Rutenberg, his communication skills with the players, and making sure that they're executing because he can call whatever he wants to call, okay? It doesn't matter what you call if it doesn't work on the field, because your players either don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to execute it, or they just haven't been properly motivated to give 150%, because I think that that's something that gets underrated. You have to motivate these they're grown men that are making millions upon millions of dollars, and outside of their own personal pride, there is a motivating factor in here. You got to be able to push the right buttons, and we'll see if Rutenberg has the ability to do that.
Well, I think for me, that's well said. And the thing I like about what the Browns, people have said to me, Schwartz was such a player's coach. I've said this over and over and over. These grown men, what a player's coach is, it's not that they like Schwartz. He maximized what they could do. Myles Garrett is a sack record, so he likes Schwartz. That's why he wanted Schwartz. He maximized what he can do. That's what Rutenberg has to do. If he wants to get these guys on his side really quick, maximize what they do. Allow them to play fast. Don't be on their side. You're in charge, but maximize what they do. And understand, if you want to be a player's coach, maximize their ability to make money and win games. And that's what they want to do, and that's what he has to do quickly because they do like Schwartz.
All right, let's pick this up here coming up in about 5 minutes. 216-474-0092. Should we be concerned for the defense at all with the Rutenberg hire, plus maybe a changing of confidence level from where we started this offseason to where we've landed now? We'll get into that as well in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Darryl Ryder with you guys all right here on the Fan Offseason Special.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/radio. That's ethos.com/radio. Paid spokesperson. Time spent.
Whenever you need to talk about the Browns, we got you covered. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darrow Ryder, all back with you guys here on the Fan Offseason Special. Still plenty to climb into. We're going to get into a couple of the major gaps currently sitting on the Browns roster, how to address some of those, what could be potential options, and, certainly some interesting things being put out about the Browns and potential cut candidates coming up later in the show as well. But we were talking to 216-474-0092. Should we be concerned for the defense at all with the Rutenberg hire? And I think this kind of circles big picture for me, because I think when we walk into an area immediately after the season, right, and you go, okay, Kevin Stefanski's been fired. You're coming off of a 5-win season, 8 wins in the last 2 years. I don't know that the message immediately, especially with everyone being like, well, there's not going to be a ton of great head coaches sitting out there, right? Like, you don't have a ton of these guys that are, you have the open on the market, like the Mike McCarthy's that were out there, guys who were there. But in terms of the rising stars of organizations where this guy's ready to take a head coaching job, and and everybody's going to be after him. It was pretty much like Clint Kubiak, and the list almost stopped there outside of Jesse Minter. Like, those were the two, and Jesse Minter felt like he was destined to be in Baltimore the second that Harbaugh got fired. But he kind of sat back and was like, okay, I don't know where the confidence level for me actually is. Like, you're going to walk into it, and great coaches spawn out of nowhere at times, it feels like, in the NFL, where, nobody thought this guy was going to succeed, or did anybody really think this was more than a stopgap? And that guy ends up being, Mike Tomlin out of the blue is there for the 19 years in Pittsburgh and wasn't one of the top candidates in the search. But I think I would have sat there and said, okay, confidence level is relatively low. Like, we're picking out of guys that basically nobody has heard of. And I think the more and more that we've gotten into this, and you look deeper into Todd Monkin, you look deeper into the type of offense that's going to be run, how it fits with the player personnel, I would say from where we ended the season to where we are now, my confidence level has really grown. And I wonder where you guys kind of stand on that.
Well, Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator of the Falcons, referred to him as one of the best teachers in the league. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking earlier about just, okay, how's he going to connect with the players? How's he going to get the most out of them, right? Because you can draw up all the X's and O's and call whatever you want schematically, but it's a matter of whether or not those players are able to effectively execute what it is you're calling. And so when you have a guy like Ulbrich throwing that out there, I don't think that that's something to be taken lightly. And now I certainly wouldn't expect him to be like, yeah, one of the worst assistants I've ever worked with, right? You're never going to hear something like that. But I do think that when he comes out and says, hey, he is one of the best teachers in the league. He has a good way of connecting with his players and recognizing their skill sets, their talents, and then also trying to maximize and exploit what they do well. I think that should make folks feel a little bit better about a guy who, let's be honest about it, if you said that you knew who this guy was before, like really, really knew who this guy was, unless like you work in a front office around the National Football League, you're lying through your teeth, okay?
Or you better be a really big Falcons fan, one or the other. There's only two options here. You're a huge Falcons fan, or you are involved very deeply into the NFL.
I mean, hey, you know what? Browns fans know who Jason Tarver and Ephraim Banda are, so, right? Okay, so there you go.
Well, and it's his, just like you said earlier, Darryl, the big names you guys were talking about, big names don't sometimes work out. It's the other way. It's the other way too, right? Sometimes the guys who are coming out of nowhere, they can be successful too. And it comes down to his ability to be organized, to be structured, to allow his players to play fast. Do they believe in what he does, how he does it? That usually comes from repetition. That usually comes from consistency. That usually comes from the daily, this is who I am. I'm not putting on a show. And just kind of getting them lined up. And once again, a guy like him, he's younger, but he's not in his, he's 44.
44, yeah.
So he's been around the league. So if you stay in this league as long as you have, that means something. So because that's hard. This is a hard business. You hire to get fired, and the the patience that people have are even lower nowadays, right? So you have to be successful right away. And once again, the constant thing that I hear about him is his ability to teach. And if your ability to teach is one thing, Daryl, you absolutely said it right. There's a lot of really, really good football coaches out there who are awesome on the board. No one cares. No one cares how smart you are. No one cares your brilliance against the formation. What can you teach your players and how fast can they do it? That's really it comes down to. What can you teach them? How fast can you do it? And can you make stops on defense? Really, that's what it comes down to. So once again, just going to kind of, for me, I'm not going either way. When people say this is the worst hire, could also be the best, right? It could be either way. Either way could be right. And to say he's going to be incredible, wrong. To say he's going to be terrible, probably wrong too. It's probably most likely somewhere in the middle, and you hope it reaches towards the top with some time.
Well, a lot of people, I'll use Mike Pettin's coaching staff there. When he was here, outside of Kyle Shanahan, there were a lot of folks rolling their eyes about some of the guys that he brought in. Now, hindsight being 2020, you go back, look at the amount of head coaches and coordinators that were here in Cleveland.
What a good staff
under Mike Pettin, right? Thanks, Johnny Manziel, for ruining that for all of us.
Yeah, that was really good staff.
Real nice joy.
But, I mean, so think about it. So to Lance's point about, hey, just because you may not be excited about a guy doesn't mean he can't come in here and do a bang-up job. And again, say what you want about the Browns' process. And look, I wish their process moved a little faster than 24 days to pick a coach and 10, 11 days to pick a defensive coordinator. But say what you want about their processes. It is a pretty thorough process. And the positive things that are said about this guy around the NFL are hard to ignore. And look, the NFL is not a business where they spend a lot of time stroking coaches' egos, okay? And I know Monkin made the joke in his introductory press conference about that, but it's a business league, and like I said, the positive things being said about Rutenberg, and how he is as a coach, how he's able to connect with his players, schematically, what he does, his former boss talking about how he's basically got a PhD in defensive football, and
I believe the quote was PhD plus.
Right.
So I don't know what's beyond the PhD really. My schooling stopped well before that.
Yeah.
But whatever beyond PhD is, congratulations to you, Mike Rutenberg, doing very well for yourself.
Right. So the fact that, again, these things are being said about him, I think folks need to just kind of take a deep breath, okay? I think that there are plenty of other issues the Browns are going to have to worry about this offseason that's going to determine whether or not they're going to be successful this fall or not. But, I just think on the surface and doing the research that I've had on this guy, because I didn't think they were going to hire him. They did. And, reading and hearing the things that I've heard about him, I think that there's a lot of potential there for him.
I want to do like a quick, we got like a couple minutes left in this segment. Do a quick couple minute exercise. I want you to take a step back from what you thought the Browns offseason was going to be, coaching staff wise, who you thought they were going to hire, what that staff could look like versus what it has ended up to be right now. Because I looked at it and thought, okay, this team is probably going back to young offensive mind, right? Like the Yadinsky, the Shieldhouse was going to be what it was. It was going to be reinvigorated on offense. Jim Schwartz possibly back as DC, but who knew what the defense is going to look like. And I think as we've gotten farther into this process, I've actually gained confidence, right? Like reading into what Todd Monkin does, and he was the last coach I wanted. I go, okay, I can see how this works. I can see how you pick Monkin, and I can see him being successful as much as I can see him being unsuccessful for the reasons that we laid out previously weeks and weeks ago when we were talking about head coaching search. So I think the confidence level from where it was has actually grown into the spot where I almost feel as comfortable, if not more comfortable, from the area where I thought they were going to land. I kind of wonder where you guys are at from what you thought they were going to what they are now, where the confidence level has changed. And we're probably going to be wrong on this, right? Like, that's the nature of the exercise. We're going to be wrong. If I say I'm confident now, they'll come out and probably win 3 games and everybody will be fired next year, and that'll be my luck. But anybody else? Is there a difference in confidence from where you started?
No, I look at the list of opponents. I look at how last season unfolded, reflecting on what ultimately was the expectation of ownership in the front office. And the fact of the matter is, yeah, they could have won 7 or 8 games this past season, but the reality is they are what they are, and that is a 5-win football team. They were not that good. And the defense is what kept them afloat for the season. Special teams were awful. Offense was just downright unwatchable. And that's basically what it's been for the last 30 years with this franchise. 27 seasons since this team has been back. It's been unwatchable offense with the exception of 2007, 2020, 2023. Like, we've gotten 3-4 really good years of fun offensive football to watch in a league that is an offensive league. I know the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl and rode the dark side defense to their second championship, just like the Legion of Boom did a decade earlier. But also, too, Sam Darnold plays some really good football, and that offense was pretty fun to watch, Jackson Smith and Jigba and whatnot. So I still think, without knowing what they're doing this offseason offensively, I'm playing the, well, it can't get much worse card. I'm gonna play that, and I still think anywhere from 6 to 8 wins for them this fall.
See, I'm a little different. You know me. I'm kind of like that coaching perspective where I never lose a game before I play it. So, but the reality is this.
But the Browns do.
Maybe, but here's the reality for me. I think immediately the defensive coordinator hire was the big hire because Todd Monkin coming in, and I like Kevin Stefanski, but Stefanski is a plays over players, right? The system, the wide zone, the boot. Monkin's more players over, right? He's a players guy, and when you have that, you can have less talent, right? So you take your best guys, you get them the ball. So we know we have Harold Fan and Junkins. You get them a couple guys that can be better, right? Special teams have to be better. They were really bad. And when people argue with me, that's all about alignment and effort. Alignment, effort, fundamentals, that can be in the NFL, it should always be a wash. So for me, it comes down to how good can this defense be? Because I think the offense will be better. The special teams has no choice. And if the defense can be kind of what it was, then they can be successful. Now, they have to go out and they have to improve inside out first. They got to get some linemen. I don't care what anybody says, who touches it, all that kind of stuff. They got to get linemen. And if they can be better up front, Monken will create some opportunities in space for the guys who can do things in space. And if it's only 4 guys, at least those 4 guys will get it. You know, I think about a guy like Ced Tillman. I was talking about him today. He's struggled because he had to be in the system. Ced Tillman can run comebacks, posts, digs, go routes. Run that with him then, right? Don't worry about what he can't do. Those are things he can do. Maybe Monken can kind of get something out of him, right? Maybe Monken can get something out of these guys that have needed a guy who maximizes their skill set, not worries about what, being in the system. And not anything wrong against the system. But when you're in a system, you need good pieces everywhere all the time. And if you don't have that, you better be a player's guy because then you'd find matchups and it's like a high school thing, right? You got 3 good players. These guys are going to touch it. How do we make that happen?
So the reason Derrick Henry ran for a lot of yards in high
Correct.
school. Yes, there is. Okay. I think it's a good point. You touched on the offensive line. They're needing to build from the inside out, and that's where I want to go next because the Browns very possibly are looking at rebuilding an offensive line, 5 guys up front, and kind of have to dig into what the best way to do that is with free agency right around the corner. It's coming your way in 5 minutes. You guys can jump in. 216-474-0092. We'll pick it up. Jake Volnick, Lance Rice, and Daryl Ryder all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
Surfside comes in flavors like iced tea, peach tea, raspberry tea, strawberry, lemonade, black cherry, mango, green tea, and more. It's not a seltzer, it's Surfside. Proud partner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sold in arena and at bars, restaurants, and stores near you. Must be 21. Please drink responsibly.
Listen to 92.3 The Fan on the Odyssey, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn app. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back with you guys here on the Fan Offseason Special. Just got done breaking down Mike Rutenberg a little bit, Browns defensive coordinator hire, where they're going with that. We're going to talk about Rutenberg a little bit later on in the show as well. We'll tie him into something a little bit more draft-related coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. But Lance hit on a point of the Browns have to build this thing out from the inside kind of out and start in the trenches, and you got to get an offensive line right. Defensive line is pretty sound right now. Doesn't mean there won't be additions this offseason, but offensive line is obviously the one that is very heavily hit on. And we've been saying all offseason, time and time again, it could be a situation where you're going into where you need 5 new offensive linemen than were your starters last year. The only guy who I would say at this point is expected to be back at least some point next year would be DeJuan Jones. And that was, both health-wise and possibly performance, the most inconsistent piece that you had, just because DeJuan hasn't been able to stay healthy and has gone back and forth between looking like a dominant pass blocker to DeJuan's a little slow right now and doesn't feel like he has the same step. I mean, the only positive news we got, and I think Jason Lloyd was on it early, but it's come out in multiple places at this point, is that the Browns and Joe Bitonio have agreed to push the void date back on the contract until the end of the league year in March. So it basically is giving Joe Bitonio 3 more weeks to decide, do I want to come back for this upcoming season in 2026, or am I going to call it a career and basically hang it up as we expect? Those are the 2 options laid on the table for Joel. I mean, I think that's a massive starting point and kind of where I look at it, because everybody keeps hitting offensive line, draft, which you're going to draft offensive linemen. I just don't think it's realistic necessarily to go, we have to rebuild the offensive line and let's draft 3 guys we plan on starting.
Well, it's a $23+ million salary cap hit decision. Okay? If he comes back, they can ease that pain. If he doesn't come back, they're going to take it between the teeth. That's just the cold, hard math of the situation. So
I'd imagine some heavy urging going on from the Browns. Like, maybe 1 more year. Maybe
yeah,
1.
Well, I mean, look, knowing Joel, this wasn't a surprise to me that they decided to do this, because there's a big part of him that does want to come back. I don't know why. I have no idea why Joel Bitonio wants to would even contemplate putting himself through another Browns season. Okay? You'd think 12 of them is enough, but he's thinking about coming back seriously. Which obviously would help the Browns from a cap perspective. It would certainly help them, from a roster perspective, and knowing, okay, you can plug him back in at left guard. That now leaves you 4 other positions you have to worry about instead of 5. But I just, I'm split on it. Like, there's part of me that wants him to come back because I love Joel Bitonio. But then there's part of me that wants him to retire because I love Joel Bitonio. Okay? And if he comes back, he's going to have to learn a whole yet another new offensive system and, blocking scheme and like all that stuff. But it's hard to give up. I mean, Coach, you know about this, man. Like, football's in his blood, and it's in a lot of these guys' blood. It's what they're passionate about. And that is really hard to give up. And also, too, let's be very clear. It's not like Joel Bitonio was the weak link on the offensive line last year. He played really well. He's
playing at a high level. You're right.
Yeah,
it's not sentimental. He's playing at a high level.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean, look, he's had a couple of stretches where it wasn't great or at the Joel Bitonio level we've all come to expect from him. But he was still playing at a really high level. So this is not a ploy. He's really struggling with this decision right now.
Well, I'll tell you, the good thing about what should make fans happy if you want him back is the addition of Monkin and Warhop. And here's why. Not only does Monkin find matchups for skill guys, but he also does that for his offensive linemen. And where Joel and Teller have been the best is when they're out pulling, right? Teller's down blocking, he pulls, and Joel's getting out in front. Joel is as good at pulling, kicking out, getting to the second level, inside zone, chipping the neck. He's outstanding, and they kind of went away from that. And that's kind of made him, I won't say average, but you're not an all-pro that he's been. They're going to pull them, right? That's what he does well. That's what Warhop will have him do. That's what Monk will have him do. The other thing that Warhop will bring, besides all the thing, is the why. And every day I try to start practice watching those offensive linemen. And the thing that was so impressive about Callahan was never the drills. They all do good drills. They're all hitting the sled. This is why we do this on this play. This is where the linebacker will be. So these grown men who have been doing it a long time, they want to know why we're doing it. And sometimes when Callahan left, that wasn't always the case. A lot of guys just rep. We're going to rep, and we're going to knock guys off the ball.
Well, Mike Vrabel had to ultimately coach the offensive line.
Yeah, so
you know what I mean. In the 24 season, he took over like at the end of September because it was so bad.
Yeah, and these guys want to know. All right, so if we're running zone and it's a 4-3 look, Callahan would say in a 4-3 look, the backer is going to come here. This is where he's going to come, right? And so that's what helps when you get an old veteran like Warhop and Monk, and they're going to give you more of the why, which will keep some of those veterans around. Then I think they got, everybody wants to draft, what I think is important, but you need some grown men, right? You don't need all 23-year-olds. You need some grown men from 25 to 30 years old that can come in and kind of make this happen, especially those interior guys.
And I've always thought that is a very important thing, especially with the offensive line. But Coach, in a more football, in the coaching aspect, when you take a look at guys who are, fresh out of college, trying to develop into this versus a guy who's been in the league for 5+ years, what's the difference on the offensive line for you of that's why you need at least a couple of guys up there to kind of show the ropes?
Well, for me, it's comparing, if you want a good comparison, it's comparing a freshman lineman in college to a senior. And what I mean by that is a freshman is 18-year-old kid. As talented as he is, he's a kid. He's not mature. A 23-year-old, now he's mature. It's the same kind of thing for an offensive lineman, right? And I think especially for the guards and center. Those guards and center are double teaming. They're in the trenches. Now, tackles do that too, but tackles can get away with walling people off. Tackles got to be great athletes to get their butts back so they can pass block. So you can get away with a 320-pound rookie who's a great athlete and can pass protect. Inside, those are kind of the grizzled old vets, right? Those are the old men, grown men with beards who have been doing this a long time, lifting weights. If you're going to vertically move people back, that's where you have to have those older guys, especially inside.
And that's where some of this difficulty comes in, because obviously this is not where Ethan Posick, even if they wanted to put him back on a contract, is coming off a torn Achilles. You're talking about a chunk of missed time for him coming back next season if he was back. Wyatt Teller, that situation is about as fuzzy as a situation can be, because you have no clue. Was that a more Kevin Stefanski decided decision? Is that now a full Browns organization decision where Wyatt was kind of cut out of the mix? And then obviously Tevin Jenkins sits on the table, who at times played okay last year, but I don't think played great. You get into a spot where you now have to find this and find all of these things. And I think this is where the struggle comes in with Andrew Berry, because I've looked at the guys that not only have you not drafted offensive line particularly well, and guys haven't developed and turned into starters on that line and picked up after the guys behind them when they've gone down, but I also turn around and look at the free agent offensive lineman you've brought in. Well, it hasn't been great, right? You went out and got Cam Robinson. Did not play well last year. KT Leviston was a guy you traded a 7th-round pick for.
Yikes.
Wasn't supposed to be good. Did not play well last year. And KT is one of the guys that I rip on a lot, but I almost feel bad for, because I'm
a traffic cone would have been a better option than
but
having
if you move
KT
him down,
Leviston.
But if you move him down inside, if you watch in the run game, if you
he's
move
great
him,
in the run.
He's great in the run. So put him down in guard, because then you're setting that poor man up for failure. Mm-hmm. Now, when I used to watch Jed, I think you can agree with this. Jed was almost sometimes an effort thing. KT was always trying. He can't do it. He can't do it at tackle, but he can do it at guard.
Jed wanted to do anything but play football.
Yeah, but if you KT, he just needs to be moved inside. He's not going to kick back. You're asking him to do something he cannot do. But if you move him inside, when you see him get locked onto somebody, he'll block you.
He's a mauler.
And that's what you can do inside when you have, those short little areas. You don't have to have the lateral movement. The athletic ability for moving from guard out to tackle is tremendous in the NFL.
Yeah.
Put him down at guard. It's not saying he's going to be a starter, but he can be a rotational guy at a guard. At tackle, you're setting the poor kid up for failure. He tries hard. He can't do it.
So, this is a thing, too, is that building the offensive line from a financial standpoint really shouldn't be that difficult. Like, you can go get mid-tier offensive linemen, especially interior offensive linemen. You're talking about a few $1 million on a contract, right? Like, it's going to be your tackles that are the guys making the more high-tier money that are going to be harder to go out and find a mid-tier, because it's in a lot of ways, to a much lesser degree, like a quarterback. Well, you have your mid-tier of quarterbacks, but those guys are kind of bouncing around and are okay. The elite quarterbacks and even then the good quarterbacks get paid because you need one of those guys, and the tackles act that way. Guards should be easier to find. Again, I just draw back on Andrew Berry, where I just go, well, you've given me, I've seen J.C. Treader get picked up on this team, which was pre-Andrew Berry.
That was a John Dorsey trade. Gave up it was like a pick swap with the Bills, 6th or a 7th round pick, and that was a steal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's not been able to hit on anything when it comes to the offensive line, going all the way back to Jed Wills and not drafting Tristan Wirfs. Like, what a disaster that was for them, because Wirfs would still be here. He'd be your perennial Pro Bowl left tackle, right? Your anchor. DeJuan Jones is a miss. The guards that he has brought in have all been misses.
It's Alexander, obviously the most recent.
It's one of the reasons why I was so reluctant with him surviving this, because the two areas that they need to fix this offseason, the wide receiver room and the offensive line room, are his two worst positions since he's been the GM of this team. He's terrible picking receivers. He's terrible at picking linemen, and he's your GM. So what could possibly go wrong when those are the top two things you have to address this offseason? And I ain't all that crazy with the rest of the front office he has. So, I mean, again, they have their processes. They have their data department and all that. That's all well and good. But I'm looking at the results. I'm looking at the players that have been brought in, and I'm looking at the results. The only good thing that he did at the wide receiver position was he traded for Amari Cooper. And he gave up a 5th-round pick to do it. You got 2,000-yard receivers out of that guy, and as soon as he started going downhill, got him out of here, sent him off to Buffalo, turned that 5th-round pick into a 3rd-round pick. That's where the positivity ends when it comes to Andrew Berry and that wide receiver room. The next wide receiver he drafts, whether it's in the 3rd round, the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round, the 7th, will be the 1st. And hopefully he uses a higher pick now on a receiver. But again, that scares me because I'm not confident he can identify wide receiver talent. And again, same thing goes with the offensive line. I have no faith in Andrew Berry's ability to effectively evaluate and select those players. First things first, you got to make sure they love to play the game. You got to make sure they love to play the game. And they get so caught up in their data and their spreadsheets and their information. And again, I'm not knocking it. The more information you have to make a better informed decision, the better. I understand that. The problem is they don't factor in the human element. Goes back to the defensive coordinator thing. Nobody read the room and thought Jim Schwartz might pop his top that he didn't get the head coaching job and tell him to go stick where the sun doesn't shine. I could have told you that Jim Schwartz would probably do that, okay? And I'm not in that building every day. I'm not an employee of the Cleveland Browns, but I know that. And it goes back to my rule. If Daryl knows it, you should too.
It's a pretty fair rule to live by.
Well, and when you look at, like, for example, the numbers versus feel, it kills the Browns because of that. So when you look at a guy like Jed Wills or Wirfs, right? When I look at a guy like Wirfs, when he's a state champ wrestler, killer wrestler, I'm done, right? That's the feel. That doesn't tie into it, but the idea, I love the game. There's no tougher humans on the planet than wrestlers. Those things don't tie into the numbers, but they should, especially with offensive line. Sometimes you're not going to be, your 10-yard split isn't great, but you know what? You love to play and you're nasty and you know how to use your hands and you know how to do certain things that really don't show up on a combine or on a spreadsheet.
And understand leverage and pad level.
And just be
footwork.
And all those things. So those things don't always tie, especially, so when you're doing numbers, it kills you offensive line-wise. And that's what you have. That's a Jed Wills. Jed Wills on paper is phenomenal, but he's not a killer. And that's what you need offensive line. You need mean guys. You need wrestlers. They're mean. That's what it comes down to.
I could have told you that just in the locker room looking at Jed.
All right, we're going to pick up the offensive line conversation, come up here in 5 minutes. We're going to get into some of the receivers as well. You're listening to the Fan Offseason Special right here on The Fan.
can now stream The Ken Carman Show with Anthony Lima live on the 92.3 The Fan YouTube channel every weekday from 6 till 10 a.m. Subscribe to the 92.3 The Fan YouTube page now for free. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special. Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darrow Ryder with you guys for another hour here, and still plenty of things to get into. A little bit more draft-related stuff and some offseason moves the Browns could or maybe absolutely could not be making. But we're talking offensive line. We're going to get into some of the receivers here in just a minute. But I do think that when we talk about the offensive line side of this is that it gets really interesting. There's just so many different ways you can go about building this thing. And it's not really a good thing. Like, the reason you have so many different options on where you can go is because you currently have nothing. Like, or at least next to nothing. But it's going to show you. Like, I mean, we're having a conversation in the break. It feels like you're going to have to probably find 2 guys who can start for you in the draft. And then you're talking about at least 3 guys that are going to be starters for you in free agency, which, again, I don't think is like a crazy task. Because we'll sit here and, I mean, absolutely as we should, rip on Jed Wills. You can look back at Jed. I mean, he started in the NFL for 5 years, right? Like, yeah. There were definitely questions that you had, but he was an NFL starter for 5 years. There wasn't a time where they went, well, we got to go get the Cam Robinson type because Jed is so bad. Because when Jed gave the effort on a play, he was actually
really good,
a really good left tackle. And It was just whether or not you were getting that. And especially with the offensive line you had, I think there were moments where it was like, okay, well, it stinks when Jed's not giving his effort, but is it the ultimate thing that is like, it's the end of you? No, like it kills you, and I'm sure it makes whoever's coaching the offensive line at the time want to bash their head into a table. But, okay, he's still good enough to go out there and play, and all of the other 4 guys that are out there when they're healthy are really good because that's where the offensive line was at. But you're going to have to find 2 guys that start for you and 3, and the money's going to work. The options are out there. I know, Coach, like you were just rattling off names during the break because you've scouted a ton of offensive linemen. Like, they have options.
Oh, yeah, you talk about guys who can play – tackle at a high level, guys who can move their feet. There's guys out there. I love Fano Managola from Miami's outstanding. Monroe Freeling from Georgia. There's guys out there. And then interior-wise, there's some maulers out there. But again, those interior guys, you better get some veterans as well. They need an influx of guys who can start. They need free agents that can start. They need backups that can play. They need to move the guys they have that they had out of tackle. They need to kind of revamp that tackle more than they do inside. I think they have some guys that they can move inside that'll be competitive. But again, if I'm the Browns right now, I'm pushing for Bitonio. I'm making things right with Mr. Teller. I'm doing everything I can to make things right with him. Hopefully that was with the previous staff and he wants to be here.
I think that had a lot to do with the previous coaching staff, judging by certain things that were posted on social media by family members.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Get any more specific than that.
I saw it as well. And so then think about you got those 2 down, and then my thought is, and then you can't count on DeJuan Jones, but he has skills. Can he be the right tackle, or can you go get tackles? He could be the swing tackle and play occasionally. I don't know, but if they could get those 2 guards back, it would be the gap could close a little bit better, right? Because they're 2 high-level guys who are still playing at a high level.
Well, the problem for the Browns the last 2 years specifically, like we really got spoiled for about a 5 to 7 year stretch where the line was healthy. Those guys were consistent.
The dominant. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And so we got spoiled by that all 5 played at a high level, and then the injury bug started hitting them, and the last 2 years, the lack of depth up front really reared its ugly head, and part of the reason why is because I harp on the Jed Wills thing. That was Andrew Berry's first draft pick, and he blew it. Okay, then he drafted Nick Harris, and unfortunately, that didn't work out. Dawson Deaton, who he was a late round pick, a 6th or a 7th round pick.
Out of Texas.
Yeah,
really, even at 7th, and in the 7th round, I was shocked.
Luke Whippler hasn't really worked out. Zach Zinter hasn't worked out, and again, when you're talking about those 3rd round through 7th round type of picks, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Okay. Mm-hmm. There are no guarantees there, but there's been no development with those guys. And the whole point of, picking those guys is to develop them so that when you get in a position like this where, it'd be nice if, Luke Whippler could step in to one of these, to one of these positions. He was drafted, I think, in 2023. He's not. He's not ready. Zinter was a pick the next year after that. Not ready. So your problems are compounded when you're unable to use those mid to late round picks on guys, which are intended for development, and you don't get any development from it. And that's how you end up in a situation this offseason where we're sitting here talking about not just replacing 2 or 3 key offensive linemen. We're talking about replacing the entire group that they have to do, fix there. And of course, I didn't even mention DeJuan Jones. The injury bug has just completely derailed his career because as a rookie, he was playing as good at left tackle as anybody in the National Football League. And then he got hurt. And then, unfortunately, comes back, gets hurt again. Comes back, gets hurt again. Comes back, gets hurt again. And here we are with him now. And it's just very unfortunate he's so injury-prone. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think he's ever going to be able to realize his talent just because the injury. I mean, listen, the human body can only withstand so much. This isn't an effort thing for me. This is a realistic to how much of a pounding can your body take, and I just don't know that his body's going to be able to hold up for him to be able to realize that talent.
When you talk about, you talk about the development too, with those guys who are having trouble turning the corner, for me, that was a loss of Callahan too. He really wrung those guys. He got the most out of those guys. So when when people talk about coaching and it's a players' league, and you know me, I'm players over plays, always be that way. But when you got a guy who's kind of on the fence and can be really good, boy, Callahan. Even remember when he was here, like some of those guys would go in, they wouldn't miss a beat. That's what.
Well, the development went out the door when Vrabel had to step in and handle the offensive line.
Yeah, he's just patchwork.
He's just trying to get the starting 5 ready for
and make
Sunday.
sure they know who they got.
Right.
Who am I blocking? There's not a lot of fundamentals. I got you.
And they just never recovered from that. Once Callahan left,
it's been a struggle.
It really has. And the fact that Warhop is stepping in here, I think that was a very good hire by Todd Monkin. And he's been here before. The offensive line played well under him when he was here before. I think, aside from, I know we were talking about earlier in the show about how defensive coordinator was the most important hire on the coaching staff. I'm going to disagree. I think the offensive line coach was the most important hire.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I agree with you. Offensive line strength coach.
I wasn't criticizing you.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Because it's strength coach and the offensive line coach at any level of football are your most important hires. No doubt.
It definitely, it's something you're going to have to look at. I mean, the offense line's going to be a wreck. Obviously, the other side of this coin on the offense is you not only have to rebuild the offensive line, the wide receiver room also needs a boatload of help, which is why Nick and JP were talking earlier today, and I've kind of scratched my head at the idea because you're going to have draft picks to draft wide receivers. There's also a few guys on the veteran market, and when speaking about Tyreek Hill, Nick seemed very opposed to the idea of even the consideration.
I could not have less interest in Tyreek Hill joining this Browns team, and that includes if you today could say, Nick, I can lock in a 1,600-yard season next year, I still am, like the blackjack dealer, washing my hands and putting them up.
Wait. For a 1,600-yard season, I could promise you a 1,600-yard season. You're saying no, thank you.
Absolutely.
You just think he's that cancerous to the locker room? Is that the idea?
I cannot find a redeeming quality for him. This is Antonio Brown at the end of his career.
I have a really hard time finding a redeeming quality with him too. But I tend to. If you tell me 1,600 yards is on the table, we got a lot worse players with all sorts of bad redeeming qualities that exist in the NFL. Like 1,600 yards, I can look different ways.
So I will say some of this is from the Brown side, where I think this is a play through the thread kind of year, and if you have a good offseason, that might take you to being better than people expect.
Mm-hmm.
I also am not taking this risk on a first-time head coach with this young of a team.
Here's where I think about it. I just think that we're not in the conversation because too many teams like the Chiefs are going to be.
So, and I agree, JP's point on Tyreek Hill at the end is a very valid one. I also don't understand this idea of, okay, if you would have brought in a Shieldhouse or Yadinsky, and look at the free agents that are on the table, the big names floating around right now. It is Tyreek Hill, it is A.J. Brown, it is Brandon Ayuk. Those are three guys who would probably be considered on the outside looking in toxic to their locker rooms.
Yes.
Like very big personalities. If you would have brought in one of the young guys, I could get it. I don't go and I don't touch those guys because that's a lot for them to deal with as well, trying to learn how to be a head coach. Todd Monkin is about to be 60 years old. The guy has been around the National Football League for as long as you can imagine, has dealt with every type of personality under the book. Why on earth am I shying away from a guy at wide receiver, which is the probably second most diva-filled position behind corner, or defensive backs in general? Why am I shying away from a guy with some attitude and a guy who might present some problems that you have to deal through just because I have Todd Monkin as my head coach? Like, if anything, Monkin is the type of head coach where I go, no, give me that guy, because he's going to find a way to keep that side of it quiet, work through that, and get production out of him.
Well, I'll say this. The Browns do a good enough job creating their own headaches. You don't need to bring them in. Okay, and Kareem Hunt really was the exception to the rule as far as the team of this organization and their willingness to take on problem children, and it never works out here. It doesn't. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Now, unfortunately, and the reason why you have the conversation, because it works out everywhere else. But for whatever it is, here in Cleveland, anytime, and again, Kareem Hunt was the exception to the rule. They actually got something out of him by giving him a second lease on life when it came to football. I have no interest in Brandon Ayuk. I have no interest in Tyreek Hill either. Now, if you're going to sit there and tell me he's putting up 1,600 yards, I may revisit that thought because, again, production equals tolerance. If you're a highly productive player, my tolerance for your off-the-field shenanigans gonna be pretty high. But if you're a marginal to awful player, you better keep your nose clean because I'm not going to be able to put up with anything you do off the field, right? So while I understand where Nick was coming from there, look, if you're telling me Tyreek Hill's coming here for a 1,600-yard season, you have my attention because I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. But the little tongue in cheek. I don't think the Browns caught for 1,600 yards the wide receiver room last year. Okay, and again, I realize there may be a little tongue in cheek there. In the break, I'm going to add it up, and I'm going to tell you if the Browns receiving core last year caught for a combined 1,600 yards. So if Tyreek Hill's coming here for 1,600, I'll take him. But anything less than that, I'm not interested.
If you take out Harold Fannin, I actually don't think they went for 1,600. Just doing the quick math.
No, he's not. No, I said wide receivers.
Harold
Fannin doesn't count. He's not a wide receiver. He's a tight end. Running backs, they don't count.
I'll save you the math. They're not going for 1,600 in that group.
Well, it's always a fine line, and it's based on the coach. And some coaches are good at that, some are not. And you know what you're getting with Tyreek Hill, so you can't be surprised when he's here. Mm-hmm. You can't go, oh, I can't believe you did that, because he's going to do it. But does what he gives you, is it worth it? And if you're talking 1,600 yards, this is a product-based business. And this isn't a moral business. You wish it was sometimes, but that's not what it is.
You wonder why they're gonna take a chance. They could potentially take a chance on that. Jimmy Haslam flat out said when I was the one who was like, hey, so Jimmy, you hired Todd. That means you're winning a lot more games than you did last year, right? Because remember, that's why you fired Kevin. And he's like, well, I don't know about a lot, Daryl, but oh yeah, Terry, you said we're ugly to watch. We are not going to be ugly to watch this year. We might not win a lot, but we're going to be fun. We're going to be entertaining, right? And so that's why I could definitely see the Browns continuing to take swings and chances on these problem children because they're desperate. And desperate organizations do dumb, desperate things. And so I'm not going to discount the Browns' interest in anybody regardless of their off-the-field situations because, again, this is what the Browns do. When you're incapable and you show that you're incapable of fielding a quality product year in and year out, and you're incapable of finding talent on your own, you take chances. I mean, they couldn't find a quarterback for years. They traded for Deshaun Watson and everything he came with and gave him a fully guaranteed contract. that's going to haunt them for 3 more years. So, yeah, I'm not going to dismiss it. I can't be as dismissive as Nick was just because I know how this organization operates.
I know it's 100% a chance. We're going to get into it because one of the things that still bugs me that we're going to get to here in 5 minutes is the fact that you can say that about a wide receiver. I don't know too many quiet wide receivers who just put their head down and go to work every single day and don't make a lot of noise. I don't know a whole lot of those even exist at this point. Hey, I'll get your guys' thoughts coming up here at about 8:23. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Rice, and Daryl Ryder with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
AmericanEagle.com at 773 Network. That's AmericanEagle.com 773 Network.
Don't trust anybody with your Cavs coverage unless they have sports in their name. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Daryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back on the Fan Offseason Special. Talking a little bit of wide receiver. I see you guys in line. We're going to get to some of your calls here coming up as well. And you can chime in 216-474-0092. Daryl, do we have an official count on wide receiver yards?
I've done the math. I've checked it twice.
Find out who's naughty and nice.
A lot of them are very naughty and not very nice. Always good, and I think this might be like the 27th time. I facetiously say this, but like it's always good when your leading receivers don't even play the position.
Yeah.
And once again, the 2025 Cleveland Browns fit that bill perfectly because Harold Fannin Jr. was your leading receiver on this team. Jerry Jeudy, number 2. 1,467 yards by the collective wide receiver cast of Jeudy, Tillman, Bond, Corley, Thrash, and Lavarden. So there you go, 1,467 yards. So the premise of the previous conversation holds some water that if Tyreek Hill comes in and catches for 1,600 yards, that would be more than the entire wide receiver room combined.
Yeah, to put that in reference, if you would have duplicated Jamari Thrash and put his production out there again, they still would not have had 1,600 yards, just to be very clear.
You could put you could put 997 yards onto Jerry Jeudy's total, and it doesn't add up to 1,600.
It's quite a
I
bad
had to
math.
do that math on the fly because he had 602 yards receiving.
I think all the listeners can hear the gears turning as you're
Dude,
doing
I either need a hammer or some Tylenol after doing all of that. Because my calculator just took a beating.
So, but again, like the main premise is going back and looking at the receivers, and obviously to that point, like the receiving core. I don't think there were a lot of things that helped them this year. I think quarterback play is obviously a really big part. I mean, they caught catches from 3 different quarterbacks for more than 4 games between Flacco, Gabriel, and Shador.
Right.
You also didn't have great offensive line play, which is going to hurt your pass game as a total and whole. But you also just turn around. It's why I can't ignore guys like the Brandon Ayuk's, the Tyreek Hills. I can't ignore even like the idea of an A.J. Brown because – well, one, I'm relying on Andrew Berry to go out and kind of draft these guys to pick one up, which Daryl's laughs tells you a lot there. Or I'm relying on Andrew Berry to trade for them, which, in all fairness, Andrew Berry trading for wide receivers has gone relatively well. Like Amari Cooper we threw out there. For all it's worth, Jerry Jeudy picking him up last year, being a 1,200-yard guy, signing him to a contract extension that actually, if you would have waited a year, would have been significantly worse, and you would have paid him much more money had you signed him after last season or 2 seasons ago.
Right.
It would have been worse. But, Coach, we were talking even during the break, and you talked about a couple of guys that Monkin can even help out on this roster to the point where maybe the wide receiver room doesn't look so barren as it does right now.
Well, if you look at a guy like Sed Tillman, Isaiah Bond, 2 guys stick out to me. So Isaiah, if you look at, let's start with Sed Tillman. So he's a big guy. There's a limited skill set there. When I stand next to him in practice, he's a big young man, right? He's long. He's got long arms. He's tall. Within the system that Kevin likes to run, it's very rigid, and there's not a lot of isolation type of things. Where Monkin's different. Monkin's going to figure out what Sed does well. Sed's a big outside X, right? So he's going to run curls, digs, comebacks, post, and goes. He's going to be good in the red zone. So who cares about his limitations? Use those things. That's what he can do well. Same with Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond is a guy who has elite speed. Well, let's make sure we take the top off with Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond's also a guy who has some suddenness and some twitchiness to him. Let's get him the ball in space. Let's make sure that he can get the 8th defender out of the box with some bubble screens and not always gimmicky on the reverses and stuff, but built-in stuff, option routes, things that get touches, create touches in space for guys. That's what a players over plays kind of system does. It says, I don't care what you do poorly. Of course there's things you do poorly, all these guys, but all these guys, as Monkin said, they all have elite traits that makes them one of the less than 1% of the humans on the planet. Said Tillman is a freakish athlete, but there's only certain things he can do. Let him be a freakish athlete within those things, and he'll give you some more production. Same with Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, Bond was the interesting one. I think I've brought this up on Overtime before, but like, not only were there plenty of times this year where you can go back and watch the All-22 and it's like, well, Bond was open on that play. It's just either your quarterback's currently sprinting for his life as he's wide open down the field, or the read has gone somewhere else already, and the ball's either already out of their hands or they're looking at the opposite side of the field at the moment. It's the other, you mentioned things like bubble screens. I feel like Bond really never got that opportunity within Kevin's system to catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage, catch the ball 2 yards out and make something happen. It was always, it felt in a lot of the times it was, okay, Isaiah, you're going to run a route that's probably going to take you 35 yards down the field. And hopefully your quarterback has time to find you and also has the ability to then go get you the ball. And that's going to be the extent of your route. We talked about him being used as a decoy at Texas. At times, it felt like he was a decoy this year.
Well, the thing is, when they say, oh, he's got speed, let's blow the top off, let's use him on verticals. That's very, very overrated for an offensive coordinator. If a guy's got speed, yes, you want him to run deep routes, but you like guys with length, said Tillman guys, right? Guys with arm length, guys with height. A guy like Isaiah Bond, sure, use his speed, but use his speed in other ways, right? Use his speed to get a corner off so you can get an underneath route. Use his speed in space, option routes, things that can allow him to touch. There's certain guys that you basically right now, the Browns, the last 5 years, they had to be really good for 10 to 12 plays. It's nice as a quarterback and as offense coordinator when you throw a ball 12 yards and the guy goes and gets you 50, right? You didn't do a lot. You didn't block it great. But you need those plays.
See Dylan Sampson's 66-yard touchdown against the Raiders, right? That screen pass that he took to the house. He did all the work.
It's just a swing, right? Yeah. And everybody, that's a great example.
Which, by the way, Dylan Gabriel threw that into the Jets bench. I digress.
Leave Dylan alone, Daryl. Leave Dylan. So
that was just for you, Coach.
I know.
Listen, I don't have the money to sit third row, but if I did, I would have had a hell of a souvenir for about a minute and a half.
But that's a great example, though. That was a simple touch. Right? It wasn't anything spectacular. It was a simple swing, and he made a great throw and a great catch, but that was all Sampson. Those are kind of things that help an offense that the Browns have not had, and that's because of the rigid, system kind of offense. Monkin will be very, very good at that. He always has been.
Well, I think you just outlined, the reason Kevin Stefanski is not here anymore. Jimmy Haslam said it was a wins and losses thing. Andrew Berry said it's a development thing. It's progress, and I'm using Andrew's words here, independent of game outcomes. That is a very Andrew Berry phrase. But what he was saying there in coded language was, we did not do a good job developing players. We went through the offensive line, right, and all the issues that they've had there with the linemen that, maybe it wasn't all that Andrew Berry missed. It was a lack of development of the players Berry brought in. Let's look at some of the draft picks that Berry has made at wide receiver. You got guys, Donovan Peoples-Jones. We saw flashes of him, but just never developed under Kevin Stefanski. Anthony Schwartz, who was a third-round pick, we saw flashes, never developed under Kevin Stefanski. Michael Woods, the same thing. David Bell, another third-round pick. We're talking about, Cedric Tillman, who's a third-round pick, right? Look, you should be able to find talent in the third round. I can't just be dismissive of guys. Well, that's a third-round pick. Yeah, there's no expectation. No, there is expectation. You should be able to develop those guys. Jamari Thrasher was a fourth or a fifth-round pick. Again, that's, I think, at the heart of why Kevin Stefanski is no longer here is just what we've been talking about tonight. Is, players over plays instead of plays over players, and then just the lack of development in those two key position groups. Now, I'm not completely sold that Andrew Berry, hit the bullseye from a talent perspective by picking those guys, but to Coach's point about, you watch these guys game, and there is something there. Are they complete players? No. Are they a number one wide receiver or a number two receiver? No. But can they be a slot? Can they be an occasional X? Can they be a guy that you throw a bubble screen to? Yeah. Or a gimmick play or something like that to use, their speed or their size. Yeah. And that just has never materialized. So hopefully with Monkin, you're going to see in both of those position groups maybe an opportunity to develop the talent, because the lack of development in the last 5 years are why the Browns are in the spot they are, and we're bemoaning the fact of the lack of talent in the receiver room. I'm making jokes about them only having 1,400 yards receiving. The leading receiver on the team don't even play in the receiver room and things like that. Like that this is the kind of stuff that makes you unwatchable. This is the kind of stuff that leads to 5-win seasons and only being able to score 16.5 to under 17 points per game. Like they got to really, really focus on the development aspect, especially because I do anticipate they're going to invest. They got 10 draft picks this year, and I could very easily see 5 of those picks used on offensive linemen and wide receivers.
It gets interesting. I think the fun part is if you talk about a Tillman and a Bond, if Monkin is able to use those guys, you talk about being, potentially a wide receiver 1 away from being, which sounds very understated, is obviously a very big thing to accomplish. That away from like a useful wide receiver group, like an acceptable wide receiver group that the Browns did not currently have. We got about 30 seconds. I promised I'd go out to the phones and make a right call Kyle right hotline here. Alfonso's in New York. You got about half a minute, Alfonso. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Real quick, I got a trade idea for you guys. Would you guys trade a first-round pick or even an early second-round pick to the Cowboys for George Pickens to solidify the number 1 wide receiver role, or is that too much for him?
Too much for him, and the Cowboys are not making that trade, I don't think.
Alfonso, appreciate the call. Yeah, I don't think the Cowboys would be willing to part with George Pickens after the way he just looked, but I think that's another guy that kind of fits into this, and Pickens is younger.
Well, let me ask you, is Dak Prescott coming with him?
Depends who you ask in this city, because there's at least one person who would tell you yes.
Listen, I'll
you see where I'm going.
Well done. I just caught that.
But I do think that Pickens, he's much younger than the other names that we've thrown out, but he fits into this. Okay, it's a guy with, obviously, you talk about the personality side of George Pickens, talk about in Pittsburgh, that's a guy who, it's not so much off the field problems, but he comes with a real attitude problem of, like, you've seen him give up on routes. He's fighting guys in the back of the end zone at the end of games. Obviously, as we saw here in Cleveland. I just turn around and I go, what other wide receivers? Like, I genuinely throw out as many as you possibly can. I don't know very many wide receivers in this league who don't have that kind of edge to them where the coach is going to have to, do his best to not silence them, but really rein them in.
I got one for you. Jarvis Landry.
Yes.
Jarvis was great. I would not call Jarvis a diva, though.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, he was aggressive with his teammates. He got on his teammates for being soft. He was a big reason why they kind of got this thing out of the 4-44 ditch by trading for him. He wasn't a diva, though. And here's the thing. Again, I will put up with your diva behavior as long as you produce. As long as you show worthy of being a diva. You don't get to just be a diva because you're a wide receiver. You got to put up catches, yards, and touchdowns. Then you get to be a diva. Again, production equals tolerance. That's how this works.
I think the beautiful thing is all the names we've thrown out there, George Pickens being one of them, I don't think you get the other 3 gettable. They've all been productive wide receivers. They've all given you a reason to overlook the diva aspect of it. It's like for every Jarvis Landry I have.
We all know you're a diva, but you produce you produce every night.
Well, not
and so you're allowed to be a diva.
Well, that goes back to him, people having issues with Monkin. He's going to be a lot more tolerable. He understands he can handle these guys. He's been around these guys, like you said. So that's important too. That he's not Shieldhouse where he's 30 years old. He's a guy who's been around. He understands how these guys tick, and he can make that work. Because if you put up yards, he'll find a way to make it work. They all do.
All right, one more segment coming to you guys here in about 5 minutes. As we look at it, there is one potential cut candidate that I don't think anybody here could possibly agree with.
Nope.
And a question around best player available. We'll touch on both of those as we wrap things up right here. Jake Volnick, Lance Rides, and Daryl Ryder with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
Tommy Lima from 6 till 10 a.m. Baskin and Phelps 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. And Afternoon Drive with Nick Wilson and Jonathan Peterlin from 2 to 7 p.m. Each and every weekday. It's free. Subscribe to 92.3 The Fan on YouTube. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Final segment of the Fan Offseason Special with you guys, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder. Overtime with myself, Jake Volnick, coming up here to start at 9 o'clock. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll still have some fun, but still got plenty of things to cover here in the final segment. And we're talking a lot of receivers, but there's a draft conversation to be had here in this as well. Really interesting article. Michael Cotto went through and kind of detailed every team's like a cut candidate on every single team. It was a very common article in the NFL offseason every single year. You detail a bunch of guys are going to get cut. I'm scrolling through a bunch of these, and Darryl, I know you sent it over, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. Like, maybe a little far-fetched, but like I get it, and you can make like some cap reason. You get down to the Cleveland Browns, and the name that pops up is none other than cornerback number 1, Denzel Ward. And I just turned, and I'm like, there are so many names you could pull from this team that probably drum up enough interest that it aren't going to be the headline of this article, but you'll look at it and you'll go, that's a decent-sized name, and yeah, he probably is a cut candidate. Denzel Ward, almost in no facet of the imagination, is a cut candidate for the Cleveland Browns, and I'd be pressed, and I'm interested to hear if either of you could even think to disagree with me.
No, I can't, and then what struck me was the line where he said at 29 years old, Ward may not be as elite as he once was, but he's still a solid corner. And I was like, I'm sorry, what the hell did you watch last season? Teams didn't even want to throw to his side of the field, okay? That's how well he was playing. That's how much respect he had. He cut the field off by a quarter or a third to opponents. Now, I understand that when he carries a cap hit of nearly $33 million this year, and you could save about $20 million by designating him a post-June 1 cut, you got to be. Nothing says building a winning football team like cutting your second best defensive player on the roster. Like, I was speechless when I saw that. And that's really hard to do if you know me.
Well, I saw your tweet, and I looked. So I started looking up some stuff, and I was thinking, am I missing something? I was like, there's no way. So he's 29 years old. He's missed 23 games. All right, so he's missed a season and a half. So his
career,
correct. Right. Yeah, 23 games in his career. So his legs are fresh. Over the last, especially this year, I thought he did a wonderful job of making sure that, his best ability is availability. Now he's out a couple games, but he did a good job. He's a physical corner, even though he's not the biggest guy. He's not afraid to stick his head in there. Unfortunately, he's had some concussion issues. And if you say the concussion issues, I think he's addressed that in how he tackles and what he's doing. But yeah, that was shocking because I think if anybody is getting better, I still think he's almost ascending.
He averages missing 2 to 3 games per year. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I can live with that.
Yeah.
It's not like he has missed 7-8 games at a time, or he's missing double-digit games. He's missing 2 to 3 a season. I can live with that.
Well, I think you protect him too, and this has made me crazy. Now, I back Jim Schwartz a ton, but I never liked that Denzel Ward didn't travel with the best receiver, right? So here's how if you don't want him to get concussed because he is physical, that's what people don't understand about him. He's a very physical. Have him take the best receiver all game. Have him trail because then he just stays with him. He's in man coverage, which means you're not going to be run support. That means you keep your head out of tackles. Take him. You know what? We're going to play 10 on 11. He's taking the best receiver. That means he'll never be involved in run unless he's tracking somebody down from behind. He'll protect his concussions. But yeah, I'm thinking he can do even more the next couple years. That was I was not on board with that one whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. If you want to be generous, 5 defense last year, just go take away. I mean, legitimately, what he's half of the reason probably why they are so good against the pass. Like, obviously, the pass rush is incredible with Miles, but like, on the other end, we talk about how much that scheme relies on man-to-man defense, why Tyson Campbell worked so much better than Greg Newsome did.
Right. Yep.
All that's built off the back of Denzel being able to be whoever he's on. I agree with you. Like, I always thought he should just be on the number one wide receiver, and that's how most teams, especially man teams, tend to play.
It protects you from sticking your head in there in the run game because you're just covering your guy and he'll run you off. Great. Let him cover. I'm good with that.
Most wide receiver ones also aren't blocking very hard in this league. Let's be like,
well,
not a lot of the top guys.
And the golden rule is versus man, run him off.
Yeah.
So he'll get run off all the time. He'll never stick his head in there, and because it'll protect him from himself. Put him on the best guy. You got him all game. It'll protect him from himself.
Just mind-boggling. Listen, and this is not to take a shot at Michael Cotto, but I think he's certainly in the range of here, and this is on NFL.com.
If anything, you trade him. Like I'll listen to it. I'll listen to a trade, but then you don't get the cap savings that you're looking for there. But like, yeah, I just there's no world right now where I think that makes total sense. And you're trying to sell your fans that you're trying to win as well, and also too, you want them to commit to these new PSLs and the new enclosed stadium and that, right? And trying to get people excited about spending infinitely more money to go to Browns games, right? When that, let's be honest about it, when the current stadium experience stinks, but the on the field product has been largely terrible for the better part of 27 years. So yeah, I don't think
homegrown guy. There's a lot.
There's no way they can do this. And he even acknowledged, hey, while that would be a surprising cut, it would be one that would give the Browns some financial flexibility. But yeah, no, to me, the financial flexibility is not worth getting rid of your second best defensive player. That's just plain old stupidity and bad team management.
Yeah, sometimes you try to be cute. You save $20 million. If $20 million is getting me Denzel Ward again, it might be worth it. But if it's not, then it never is. Like, you do the simple math on this. Don't make it more complicated than it is. Keep it simple. Does $20 million get me a Denzel Ward caliber player? The answer is going to be no.
You don't fix a team by creating more holes.
Exactly.
Well, and you just said it best. If you're saying we want to win, you win with good football players. There is no scheme. There is no coach that you can take the best coach in the world, and if he doesn't have players, he's going to be terrible. And that's the reality of it. So you're saying you want to win, but you're getting rid of the arguably top three corner in the league? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No sense at all. Okay, we got a couple of minutes here. I wanted to throw this in. Conversations, Daryl, I know you had it when you filled in for JP alongside Nick this week. I talked about it a little bit with Nick on Afternoon Drive as well. Coach, if I'm not mistaken, I think that you chimed in on this at one point, maybe with Afternoon Drive. There has been a conversation around the Browns at 6 in the draft, taking the Andrew Berry method, going best player available, which right now at 6, we assume to be where we're at right now, a defensive player, whether it be Caleb Downs or one of the edge rushers that falls out of the top 5, or, somehow Arvell Reese slips. Like, it's going to be one of those guys. Is there a sell right now to taking a defensive player the way that this looks at 6?
For me, yes. I mean, and here's the reason why. Because I believe in taking the best player available. Now, if you don't think that if it's a defensive player, then I think you got to trade back. Because if you fill the roster with guys who aren't elite blue chip guys, like if a guy like Caleb Downs or Arvell Reese are available at 6 and you pass on them, you're passing on guys who everybody judges them different. For me, I think they're generational guys. I think Caleb Downs is the best safety like since the Ed Reed type of days, right? He's that impactful at the free safety. So if you're not taking him and you take a guy that you don't value as much, you're just filling holes, right? And I don't believe in filling holes at the NFL level because, again, going back to you win with players. And obviously, I think for me, I'm trying to get out of this warped highway I'm on because the offense has been so bad for the Browns. But a guy like Caleb Downs, now, it has to be the level of like a Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese, but there's a good chance they would be there at 6. I'm not saying for sure, but if it's me and Caleb Downs is there, he's number 1 on my board, absolutely taking it.
Here's why Downs would make sense. Delpit's in the final year of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that pick would make sense. The challenge then becomes... You're right. And
the offense still is what it is.
And also too, and Nick and I had this conversation as well. I don't know that teams are going to come up to draft Caleb Downs. Okay. If it means you get that extra first round pick in 2027, you explore trading down. But you look at the team building where the roster is, it would absolutely make sense to draft him at 6, assuming that he is there. But, yeah, you're still not solving any of the problems that you have on the offensive side of the ball. You may have to wait until that 24th pick in Jacksonville. Then you're probably going to take a tackle, or maybe you do take a receiver there as well. But the more I think about it, the more I am coming around to the thought of, yeah, I totally get why they would do that.
I can't,
and listen, we know what Ed Reed did to the Browns for years and years and years, and Grant Delpit's been very good. Okay, let's not undersell that by any stretch of the imagination. But there are 2 positions on the field that I have long lamented. When you look at the Steelers and the Ravens' success, they've had outstanding linebacker play, and they have had outstanding safety play. Well, now you look at the Browns, you got Carson. Well, it started with JOK, but you got Carson Schlesinger playing at an elite level. You got Grant Delpit playing at an elite level. You throw Caleb Downs into that mix to if you don't keep Delpit right, that does set you up in this division. This is very division specific. In this division, it sets you up to be more competitive.
All right, guys, we're about at this is going to be a conversation. I mean, the draft is going to be obviously a heavy topic of this show all the way up until it happens in April. So we'll have more time for these conversations. But for today, we're about out of time. Lance, Daryl, an enjoyment as always. Enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely.
We'll be doing this again, obviously, coming up next Tuesday, 7 to 9, the exact same time. Overtime with Jake Volnick coming to you guys here at 9 o'clock. But for the 3 of us, we'll talk to you next Tuesday right here on the Fan Offseason Special on 92.3 The Fan.